all across America and around the world. This is Veterans Radio. This is Veterans Radio.
Good day. I'm Jim Fausone. I'm the officer of the deck today here on Veterans Radio, and thanks for joining us. We've got some interesting stories for you. We always want to remind you you can find more about Veterans Radio at its Facebook site or at the web, veteransradio.org, where we're on the web 24/7. You can find a lot of our podcasts there as well. We post new ones every Tuesday, so you can get a new story, a new interview, something you didn't know before by going to veteransradio.org. And before we get started, we want to thank our sponsors. First up, we want to thank Legal Help for Veterans. Legal Help for Veterans fights for veterans' disability rights all across the nation. You can reach them at 800-693-4800 or on the web at legalhelpforveterans.com. We just want to remind you that Veterans Radio podcasts are available on all your favorite streaming platforms, including RSS.com, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and Rees Across America Radio. So wherever you are, you can find us, whether it's on your mobile phone or your computer or your laptop, your tablet. But listen in to Veterans Radio Podcasts. We post something new every week, and you're going to find it informative. We want to welcome to Veterans Radio today a Medal of Honor recipient, Donald Ballard from Missouri. Don, welcome to Veterans Radio.
Well, thank you for having me.
Well, this is a great story and a great life. I always like it when we have a live to talk about it Valor action. They aren't always that way. But how did a nice kid like you, who grew up in Kansas City, Missouri, who wanted to become a dentist, how'd you end up in the Navy?
Well, that was, I'll try to make a short story out of a long one. I ran out of tuition money. And so I joined for financial and tuition assistance.
Many people do. Education, needing education, wanting education, and a way to get there drives a lot of folks to the military. I always get a kick out of you guys from the middle of the country who end up in the Navy. There's not an ocean around. Why the Navy?
Well, I don't know. I joined because I went to the Marine Corps recruiter's office. And they said, "We don't have no stinking dentist. Go across the hall." So I walked across the hall, and it was the Navy. Of course, they directed me to their partner. You know, the Navy and the Marines are partners.
Right.
Yeah. So I could have gone in the Air Force if I went to the other building, or Army. You know, they were in another building. That's how I ended up in the Navy. I walked in that Navy office and they said, "You want to be a dentist? We just got a quota." You wouldn't believe it. We just learned that we have a slot available. Boy, I still got the hook in my mouth.
Oh, yeah. You took the sinker, the hook, line, and sinker, the whole thing. And this is in the Vietnam War is going on. And there was a tremendous need for medics, unfortunately, because medics were a target, and that you find yourself sent off to the Navy Hospital Corpsman school because you had an interest in medicine through dental, and find yourself plopped into Vietnam. It really happens kind of that way, doesn't it?
Well, as they will put it, the needs of the service are greater than the needs of the individuals.
Oh, you heard that line a few times, I suspect.
I even tell it now.
Well, you find yourself, and life isn't defined by one act, but in this instance, it's a series of acts that led to this lifetime that you have. In May of 1968, during an ambush in Quang Tri province, you had to repeatedly expose yourself to enemy fire to treat those wounded Marines who didn't have room for you before. And it's in that action, that firefight, that an enemy grenade is thrown into you and some other Marines. You instinctively jump on the jump on the grenade to save the Marines, but maybe jumping a Marine would be good too. Jump on the grenade, and by miracles of miracles, it doesn't detonate, it's a dud, and you have the opportunity to throw it away and get back to the duty and responsibility of helping the wounded. As you think back on it now, 50, 60 years, what the hell were you thinking?
Well, let me correct the record going forward. When I jumped on it, I was just a little out of my reach. I grabbed it and pulled it up under my chest. And then the good Lord told me, he says, "Boy, you're not too smart. Get rid of that thing." And I rolled over and I threw it out of the bomb crater. And in doing so, it went off. It was not a dud.
Oh, okay.
So I, calmly arose because my pants were full of it. And I continued to work because that was not my only incident with a hand grenade. I'd been in contact with 2 others prior to that. So I had some false bravery associated with handling it. If somebody threw an M80 firecracker in a group, everybody would try to run away from it. They wouldn't try to pick it up, Well, I had a grenade come in and hit me in the helmet and fell to my legs because I was standing on my knees. And not being a Marine, I didn't stick it in my pocket as a souvenir. I was able to consciously said, let's get rid of that thing. I picked it up and I threw it away. Well, so then when I had an opportunity to think I could do the same thing the second time, that's when I took the action to reach for it, pull it under my chest, and then roll over and throw it away.
Well, that's part of being young and dumb, right?
Well, I questioned that a lot, and I thought, well, why didn't the Marines see me throw it away? Because they said that I just left it laying there so that it would go off any minute, or somebody would kick it or something. Come on. And so the rest of the story, if Paul Harvey was here, he would tell you that I was able to throw it away because they buried their heads and did not see the action that I took.
Well, and for our veteran radio listeners, we're talking to Don Ballard, who was a Navy corpsman in Vietnam and is telling this true story. I'm now looking at your Medal of Honor citation, which says, quote, "He calmly arose from his dangerous position and resolutely continued his determined efforts," close quote. I bet you arose calmly, right?
Well, my pants was full of shit. I couldn't get up very quick. I'd already defecated on myself, and so I had to slowly raise.
Well, again, these are human stories, and we all can react to them, and we can all be impressed by what you did instinctively, maybe with a little bravado. And as I say, this leads to ultimately receiving the Medal of Honor, which was presented to you by President Richard Nixon in May of 1970. One of the things we like to ask Medal of Honor recipients is to reflect on that ceremony. Most of us, maybe we see a snapshot today, you might see a little, video of a ceremony, but there's a lot of stuff that's going on, and the recipients always have kind of an interesting, oh, you didn't see this behind the scenes. What do you remember from that ceremony back in May of 1970?
Well, prior to me experiencing that, you witnessed it on television. It was a one-on, one-off ceremony, like 1 or 2 guys would get the medal. But there was 12 of us that day, and we took up the whole room, and he walked around to us. We didn't have to go to him. And so he would put the medal on us individually at where we were standing with our families. So that's the kind of a behind the scenes effort that that you don't normally see. There was representation from all of the branches: Army, Navy, Marines, Air Force.
And you probably saw more brass in that room than you'd seen the whole time in service.
100%. All the chiefs of staff, all the 4 stars. It was pretty impressive. But then after you've dealt with the president of the United States, these 4 stars seem a little less impressive.
Was your family able to attend?
Yes, the official photograph includes my family, and I like to tell it because I showed up in an Army uniform, and that admiral says that boy is not going to get a Navy medal and an Army uniform.
Right.
And so the official photograph of me with the president, I'm wearing somebody else's uniform, and he's walking around out there naked.
See, there's that little bit of back room you don't know about unless you talk to the guy who was there. You continued on after getting out of active duty Navy in February of 1970, and that the ceremony is a few months later in May of 1970. But you decided to go into the Kansas Army National Guard and have a long career beginning in the Medical Service Corps. Tell us a little bit about why you continued on and that service where you ultimately retired with the rank of colonel.
Well, it's easy to identify with the veterans that walked through that walk is that we were not welcomed home. It was a very dark time in this country. And, none of us felt welcomed home. We were not allowed to wear our uniforms off base. We would initiate a riot or a fight. Somebody would always be picking on the uniform people. And any service person got so bad that we were not allowed to wear our uniform off base. And so, that's a negative connotation that caused us to have even more anxiety because, we thought we were doing the job that our government wanted us to do because none of us volunteered to go kill people or to die for our country. We were ordered there by the politicians and by our government. So, we felt really bad when we came home and received the terrible, just unbelievable bad reaction from the public. And we were the problem. We weren't part of the solution. So saying all that, I got out of the military. I had a wife and 2 kids prior to going to Vietnam, and I had them afterwards for a period of time. I was pretty well messed up. My head wasn't where it needed to be. I was wounded 8 times and I killed 6 Vietnamese soldiers, and 3 of them was with my knife. And, so how do you expect me to come home and be normal? And even today, I wrestle with the thoughts of taking somebody's life. And you just don't stab somebody that's holding a gun. You have to wrestle them to the ground and kill them and make sure they're dead before you get up off of them. So it was an experience that I wish I never had, but I got it, so I got to deal with it. So the reason I'm getting to answer your question about why I went back in was I needed treatment. I recognized that my wife and I were not getting along, and she was afraid of me. She feared for the kids, and so she wanted to get away from me, which Today, I don't blame her a bit because I was messed up. But I felt that I wanted to stay around people that at least understood me and why I was acting the way I was, because the civilians don't have a clue what the military families have to go through. They don't walk in our shoes, so they don't experience, and they have no clue as to what the reaction, cause and effect, the follow through with PTSD. And of course, PTSD did not surface
right
until much later. That was undiagnosed mental challenge. I'm not even going to call it a mental, I don't know what to call it. But it was at time nobody else knew what to call it. We were screwed up, and that's why everybody was down on the Vietnam veteran, because it was a jungle warfare that we had never fought before. You didn't know who your enemy was sometimes, and the elephant grass over there was so tall, he could reach out and stab you or cut your head off without you even knowing he was there. And then we're in the jungles of North Vietnam, up on the hills, on the mountainsides, and it was a different quality of life. And I want to stop here and say that if you talk to 10 different Vietnam vets, you'll have 10 or 9 different stories because of the geographics and because of the enemy that they fought. We didn't have any villagers up in the mountain. I never saw a rice paddy. I don't have the same experiences that a guy down in the lowlands or clear down south in the rice paddies zone. I don't have those experiences, and they don't have mine.
Right.
So that's what's important, to back up and look at everybody's experience, because we all, as individuals, deal with it on an individual level. And so I deal with my tragedies different than you would, or another Marine would,
And getting back involved with the Army National Guard created a space where there were other guys who could kind of relate to what you went through, what they went through, and I think you've mentioned, you were able to get some health care and attention on some of these issues.
100% right. And even there's active duty guardsmen, so I could join the National Guard and still be on active duty. So I applied for active duty orders, and I spent a lot of time on active duty as a National Guardman.
One of the things that, thank you for being so candid about the transition, because even today, guys transition, men and women transition out of the military, and people don't recognize how difficult that is based on what they maybe did or where they were posted. But life goes on, right? And I think I read somewhere that you were, for a while, worked with the Kansas City Fire Department in a medical technician role, and ultimately became very active as a funeral director in that industry. Tell us a little bit about that civilian side.
Okay, well, I tried to adapt and overcome, and that's what the military, they try to train you to be a better person, a better man, in my case. And some leaders would hand you a straw and say, "Here, suck it up, deal with it." And of course, that may or may not have worked for some people. And depending on the individual's challenges as dealing with things, that might have worked and might not have. So my whole concept was, since I was maybe 5, 6, 7 years old, I've been in a uniform in scouting, and I've stayed in a uniform clear until my retirement as a public servant, as somebody, as a caregiver. I travel in my own circles of influences to help other people. I'm not about myself. I have no ego. When I'm asked, where'd I got the medal? I say I bought it at Walmart. That's just, it breaks. I have post-traumatic stress humor.
Oh, there's a line I haven't heard before. That's great. I think that's a good way to deal with it. And let's take that Medal of Honor, Walmart Medal of Honor for a moment. What life lessons do you think you've learned having? And because some say it's a great privilege, but it's a real burden to wear the medal. What life lessons do you think you have learned and try to pass on as a Medal of Honor recipient?
Well, leading up to that question, which should be, everybody that walks up to me wants to ask me, how'd you get the medal? What'd you do? Why are you a war hero? First of all, I don't think I'm a war hero. I just did my job the best I could. Secondly, is I didn't plan for a thing. There's no training on how to be war hero.
Right.
There's no training on how to jump on a hand grenade. And there's just no training or preparation that people can prepare for to do what life challenges cause. We don't know what we're going to do until the time that we're tested.
And that sort of, you were, again, once they put that medal around your neck, though, you get tested a whole lot more, don't you?
I do, because they want me to relive that worst day of my life. I spent the majority of my time trying to forget the challenges and the fears. And I was afraid a lot of the time in Vietnam. And what motivated me was, even when I was wounded 8 different times, each time I realized somebody else depended on me to live. And so I couldn't just lay there and not do something. I had to get up out of my safe place and run to where the guy was wounded, knowing that the enemy knew where he was or he wouldn't have gotten shot. And that's how most corpsmen got killed, was being the next duck in the row to get shot. So I didn't want to be a target, but if I did my job, I couldn't defend myself. They issued me a .45 before I went to the field, no magazine and no bullets. I said, what the heck am I going to do with this? He said, and the supply sergeant said, well, listen, Doc, if you feel like you need a weapon, there'll be plenty of them on the ground 10 minutes after the first firefight. And he was right. So I never carried a weapon except to fit in. If you're walking past a sniper, let me say that again. I never really carried a weapon to kill anybody. I carried weapons to blend in as not being somebody of a target, because the only people that don't carry weapons are the leaders, somebody important. So I wanted to blend in. I carried weapons, rifles, only because I wanted to blend in and not become a target.
Yeah, they were looking for officers and medics. That was the instructions. And as I say, carrying the medal, wearing the medal is a burden in itself, and that's having to relive that bad day. But also because people expect you to be a certain way, act a certain way, have a certain set of knowledge, maybe from life experiences. But you've remained active in a lot of different organizations, and I want to make sure we get a chance to talk about one of those that you're actively involved in, which is Triumphant Spirit Foundation. Tell us a little bit of what led you to that, and tell us about the organization.
Well, as a caregiver and a patient advocate, and veterans would come to the clinics and get treated for their post-traumatic stress or traumatic brain injury, their TBI. They would have some kind of physical, mental, and emotional challenge, and we would treat them for whatever the needs were, and then they'd go home, and then they relapsed. If they had a poor life and they didn't have a sense of purpose, they had no will to live, and they just hanging on by strings. They come to us looking for help, and we did the best we could. They're doing the best they can now, but that's not enough. So, it works temporary, and then you got to go back home. And so our whole concept now is I discovered this ham radio. It's called amateur ham radio. It's the emergency broadcast system of the federal government. It existed before cell phones, and it'll exist after.
Right.
And in the event there was a medical or any kind of emergency, then the cell phones go away, and the only thing we have is the amateur ham radio. So I found that to be very interesting, very much fun. And I thought, well, why not get the veterans that are suicidal or mentally challenged and emotionally challenged, get them involved and have them treat themselves. And doing so, this guy my last patient was without legs and he without a left arm. So the only physical limb he had was his right hand and arm. And so he could roll up to this radio and talk to anybody across the world, and not one person that he talked to could see him or identify that he was even disabled.
Yeah, that's it really ties back to, you just said kind of the pearl of wisdom here is you have to have a sense of purpose. You have to have a reason to live and get up and go. And that use of amateur ham radio can give a guy a purpose. Hey, I'm going to talk to so-and-so. I'm going to find somebody new in that country. It's an interesting approach. Tell us a little bit more about some of the successes that's had.
Okay. Well, we've got some success in the VA. This is all in the embryo stage, of course. So we're going to get the VA. We're going to get the American Legion and the VFWs and AMVETS. We're going to get all the veteran organizations involved and help them recruit the younger veterans. They're dying on the vine because of the perception. Nobody wants to smoke failed bar or listen to the war stories. And even though that's not the case, that's the perception. So these young kids need something to want to do and feel good about themselves. And I think I can talk to and encourage the veteran organizations to help me develop this program to encourage the younger veteran to come to their post. And by joining their post, they can join my national organization. My national club that I'm establishing does not recruit individuals, they recruit other clubs. And if we're talking to individuals, and then we require them to join a local club. Thereby, we're growing the membership for the local clubs, but that's so important because there's so much follow-up. It's one thing to learn the radio, and we pay for the education of the veteran and first responders, and then we get them tested, and we buy them the radio equipment, and we set them up to where they can now have this. They can convert this fun hobby into saving lives. Not only theirs, but they're also a new sense of purpose for them as they're helping other people in their units. We're going to the active duty units. We're going to homeschool. We're going to try to get the youth of the country involved. So before they even go into the military, they've got a sense of accomplishments and meet a new goal that was never identified before, our trying to get this new platform built. So it's a whole new attitude, a whole new way of treating the cause and effect of trauma. And you don't have to be in the military to get PTSD, But here's a way that we can treat all emotional and mental issues without anybody being judged. There's no judgmental conditions. Nobody knows you're even disabled.
Yeah, as you say, this is radio, ham radio, which has a big following, across the world. And at times of disaster, whether it be hurricanes or floods or fires, ham radio is the way in which emergency services communicate. So it does have a higher purpose. That's very interesting. And so if you go to triumphantspiritfoundation.org, you're building out a website at the moment for this activity, and people can find out more about it there.
Yes, I'm not closing it. Let me restate this. Yes, we're adjusting and changing the website to talk more about the ham radio than we did about the funerals. And the whole purpose there is that we want to treat somebody before they need a funeral.
Sure. And I didn't mention this, but I should, because I think this is an important aspect, telling you a lot about Don and some of his work. He has worked for years making sure that veterans, unclaimed and indigent veterans, get proper burials and funeral services. And I think every community ends up, maybe it's once a year, maybe it's twice a year, some post shows up and says, hey, you got a bunch of unclaimed veteran bodies here or remains in the morgue or the funeral home. Let's make sure they get properly buried. And those kinds of stories always move me. And the fact that you worked doing that says a lot about you as well, Don.
Well, thank you. It's, I went back to school at the age of 60 to become a funeral director out of need. I have never made a dime with it. I don't care. It's not my job. It's my passion, and I don't charge anything. I do what I can do for the veterans. I raise money through the nonprofit to pay for the veterans that are indigent or don't qualify for benefits. But then the door opened to me with this opportunity to treat them before they kill themselves.
Well, certainly a worthy cause. You've done Navy Corpsmen proud. You've done the Army National Guard proud. We really appreciate the time that Medal of Honor recipient Don Ballard of Missouri has spent with us, and we hope to see him this fall when he's in Detroit for the Congressional Medal of Honor Society convention. Don, I appreciate the time you've given us today.
Well, thank you. And I do want to reach out to your supporters and your followers, and I'll have business cards where it's a little bit more educational about how they can help other veterans in their community and across the country. There's over 800,000 members that we have today, and there's millions around the world. 800,000 members just in the United States alone. And so we're going to expand it to different reaches that's never been tried before. And it's just a wonderful opportunity for us to give back and help veterans help themselves.
Well, great work. Don, thanks again. And I want to thank everybody for listening to Veterans Radio today. I am Jim Fausone. It's been a pleasure to be your host. I'm a veterans disability lawyer at Legal Help for Veterans, and you can reach us at 800-693-4800 or legalhelpforveterans.com on the web. You can follow Veterans Radio on Facebook and listen to its podcasts and internet radio shows by visiting us at veteransradio.org. That's veteransradio.org. We would again want to thank our national sponsors, the National Veterans Business Development Council, nvbdc.org, Legal Help for Veterans, a veterans disability law firm with a national practice before the VA, can help you on your claims and your appeals. It can be reached at legalhelpforveterans.com or 1-800-693-4800. We also want to thank our local sponsors, This would include the Charles S. Kettles chapter of the Vietnam Veterans of America, that's chapter 310, VFW Graf O'Hara Post 423, the American Legion Irwin Preston Post 46 in Ann Arbor as well, the VA Ann Arbor Healthcare System, and certainly the National Vietnam Veterans of America Association. You can be a sponsor by going to veteransradio.org, clicking on the About Us and our sponsors, and help us out. Keep this program alive for the 21 and 22 years. Keep us going for another 20. Thank you.